Welcome to Money Talks News, the podcast making you richer one day at a time. Did you know that almost half of women over the age of 65 are single? And it's not just ladies Stacy's age without partners. Increasingly, younger women like myself are choosing to stay single after losing a partner or not getting married at all. In fact, research indicates that single women are the happiest demographic we have in this country. That happiness goes away fast if you have money problems, though. No one wants to be a bag lady. It's much better to be a cat lady. Almost all financial advice is aimed at couples, but friend of the show, Pam Kruger from Wealth Ramp is here, and she is ready to help us navigate these rough waters. Welcome to the show. Well, welcome back to the show, Pam.
Hi, Miranda. Hi, Aaron. It's great to be here.
Hello, Pam.
Yeah, and we've got Aaron with us today. He is our producer and sometimes contributor. We're so excited to have you once again, Aaron, here to keep us on the straight and narrow as we get moving into the girl talk.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to say. And it seems like men are not satisfying the older ladies.
Or even some of the younger ladies, let's be honest. Stacy is absent today. He is on a plane to New York. So we're hoping he's having a good time, but we're going to have a fine time without him as well. Let's go ahead and get into this episode's topic. So first of all, it is important for women, especially single women, to get their finances in order early on, since older women are more likely than men to be in poverty. So let's start with that, Pam. Why do single women need to be more aware of their finances than the men?
Yeah, let's start from that happy point of view. I mean, right? I don't know about you guys, but I've just been like a barrage of all these, single women have smaller 401k and IRA nest eggs. We know that. So between 55 and 64, women have about 88,000 to 90,000 in retirement savings compared to about 137,000 for a single man. So married couples, it's even more. So it's obvious that women are behind the eight ball. And I think that probably there's been enough written and enough discussed about the reasons why. I think it's really important. I love this topic. I love that you wanted to get into it because it's like, okay, what do we do about it?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And part of that has to do with, right, what we've seen in past years, like you said, much ink has been spilled and much digital ink has been spilled on this subject. But, just kind of a quick recap, part of it has to do with our years of traditional gender roles, the fact that women were expected to be caretakers, and so they're behind in their careers, whether it's because they took off 10 years to raise kids, whether it's they're caring for an elderly family member, whatever it is, women are usually behind. They lose those earning years. They lose those chances to get that nest egg built. And when you're a couple, some of the things that you have that you can do, and this doesn't include, single moms. Like I was a single mom, for several years after my divorce. And so, if you're a couple, you can be like, okay, I would like you, my husband or wife, I would like you to do a spousal contribution to my IRA. And that can help you if you're a married couple. But if you are a single lady, you do not have that option. And it can be expensive to be single. So more women are working and they're choosing to be single. So now we need to talk about the other problem is that it's expensive to be single in our society.
Yes.
So what are some ways to, first of all, before we even start about fixing that retirement piece, how do you deal with the expenses that come with being single in this society?
Okay, Pam? So are you asking me if I'm single? Because the answer is sometimes. But seriously, Aaron's here too. A lot of men are listening. Single people, I love that we're talking about single people who are solo because there's so many misconceptions about, you've heard it said many times, probably that, well, when you're single and you're on your own and you don't have to pay for kids. Oh my gosh, you've had all this opportunity to save so much more money. You should have so much more money. Well, you want to know the reality? of like economics, household economics compared like a solo compared to being in a family and having two people. According to the Federal Reserve, if you compare the median net worth of a single-headed household to a married couple, the couple's net worth wasn't just 2 times higher. It wasn't 4 times higher. It's 9 times higher than the single person. We're talking about right now, the Federal Reserve was talking about 25 to 34-year-olds. That's who the group that it was being analyzed. But that shocked me, because you're thinking about all the different ways that it does. You have these economies of scale. You're splitting, the payment that you're making on your housing, which is by far our biggest expense. You have kids and everything else, but you've got financial stability as a couple. So that's how it bears out. Those are just the numbers. The average single person is spending about $18,000 right now on housing, whether it's rent or whether that's mortgage, right? And a married couple spends about $12,500 each. So that's comparing an individual to an individual. Once when you're in a couple and you're not operating, you're operating as a solo. So look at the difference. So the economics of living single are challenging. I'm not saying feel sorry for people who are single, because as you said and pointed out, they might be having more fun. I don't know. But they're not socking away the huge amounts of money because they're not paying for kids' educations. That's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think when we're talking about getting your financial feet under you and building that foundation, what are some of the things that you can start to do? And we're going to get into investing and things that you can do as a single woman or even just a single person a little bit later on. But what are some of the basics? Like if you're not ready to get that investing piece, but what are some of the basic financial things that you can do as a single person to start laying that foundation and get your finances in order?
Yeah, it's the foundational first. And I would recommend that anyone who's thinking about how they're approaching as a solo investor, solo saver, solo homeowner, or solo renter, whatever, try to imagine that your cash cushion and your emergency reserves might need to be a little bit bigger. And that's what you really want to point and shoot for first and foremost. And that means you have to be really intentional and very strategic about getting rid of your debt. So before you can really, and that actually take that back. It's not before you can start to really see your nest egg for your emergency savings getting bigger, your foundation getting stronger. You don't necessarily have to have all your debt paid off. You can do both things at the same time. In fact, I recommend it.
Is there a correlation between being single and higher debt?
That I don't know off the top of my head. But my gut, without checking the statistics, would probably suggest that that's the case. Because when you have someone else, you've got some fortification. So something happens to you, you lose your
right,
job.
because you said it's 9 times more if you're married. You're
so there you go.
Your
savings.
net worth,
So I mean,
yeah,
your net worth. So
Yeah,
it's something to it.
So I think that as a solo in a single, you have to be a lot more intentional and thoughtful about everything you do. And that comes down to budgeting, because one of the areas just in your everyday life that you can really save is you don't have to buy food for two. You don't have to buy food that you don't like because the other person in your household might like that food. You can really be very, very strategic and very careful about where you cut your budget so that it really fits with you. And I think that sounds really silly. Like, that's really small. That's not a big deal. It is a big deal when you add it up over years of time and habits. So really, Miranda and Erin, I think that on the younger side or even mid-career, it's about getting into these habits with your budget and being very intentional, really work on strategies to pay down the debt, but at the same time, aim for a higher cash cushion. It doesn't mean you're not going to put money into your 401k for your retirement, because God knows we need to. But have that cash cushion in your mind as well, maybe being a little bit bigger than if you were married.
Yeah, and I think too, there's some really interesting. I like the idea of getting that cash cushion. I think really focusing on how you're making money, doing the side hustles, doing the promotions. One of the things that's really interesting about younger generations, especially millennial and Gen Z women, is that they are willing to job hop for that promotion or that raise, and really doing that and banking those bucks is a big part of that. And then the other thing that I find really interesting is we're starting to see amongst single people, especially single women, they're going in on housing together and making their little like friend communes so that they can share costs, share costs for subscriptions and groceries. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, I love my apartment and I love my alone time, and I'm fortunate that I can afford to live by myself. But I love these stories of women buying, these like $1 million homes so that 5 of them can like retire together and like
That's
live
funny.
together.
You just answered a question that I was trying to figure out to ask it, but I was looking at a Pew Research. It said half of singles are not looking to date. And it says most older single women are not looking to date, like 62% of them. And I was thinking, okay, so if you're trying to make more money being single, like, is there an alternate to this whole marriage concept? And you just answered it,
Yeah,
investing with friends.
exactly. And I think that's something that we're starting to see a little bit more of in our society, because all of these studies, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It says that single women who have never had children are the happiest demographic. The second happiest demographic are divorced women. And so when you look at this and they look at these longitudinal studies, women are saying, wait a second, if I can't find like a true equal, if I can't find somebody who's emotionally evolved, then let's move in with some ladies and share some costs. And it's been very interesting.
I think it's really cool that it's an idea. I think it's an option. I think it's fantastic to feel that you have friends out there that are like you. You've known each other long enough. Mm-hmm. You feel like there's a good sense that you can do that and pool your resources in some way. The flip side of that is that you might lose your best friends over it too. You know what I mean? I've seen it happen where I have a girlfriend who actually did this because it was the only way she could buy this beautiful condominium and both of them really wanted it, and they'd known each other for years, and they were going to do the whole cost sharing thing, almost like a married couple. But I mean, they had boyfriends and lives and outside of that and so forth. And they wound up finding out that they really didn't know each other like they thought they did. And it just killed the friendship. And let me tell you something. It put my friend, I'm not going to say her name, it put her years behind. Years. That was a huge loss because they didn't keep the condo long enough. That's the thing you got to think about with this. If you are going to buy something with other people, I love the concept. Maybe renting is better because then you have an easy out, right? When you're renting.
Yep.
Maybe it's a year, maybe it's you buy out the lease. When you go into a mortgage with somebody else and that's not your life partner with kids and all that, I don't know. I think that I saw what happened with her in her case, and it wasn't pretty. It didn't work out. It really took away so much of her net worth. So I think that, you have to consider how you're going to cost share. On the other hand, I have another friend who's younger. She's in her 40s. And I think people have been asking her, why don't you just rent on your own now? You can afford to. She lives in a pretty expensive area. And her answer is, I don't want to. We were roommates since college. We have our own lives. And we've got boyfriends and all that. They're not a couple, but they live as two single people together, and they save a ton of money. But remember, they knew each other, and the friendship came first, and they're renting, not owning. So that's the only tale of caution that I have there.
And I really like that approach where you sit down and say, wait a second, do I know this person? And it's actually, somewhat similar before you get married, right? Before you decide to get married and have a partner, we always talk about, you should sit down, you should have these money conversations, and you should lay it out and get to know each other before you get married.
Yeah, I was going to say a contract is a contract. I mean, everything that you just, put out there, Pam, it's no different than two people getting married, getting into something and finding out they don't like each other, and then that all goes to hell.
Yeah, except the expectation's different when you're single and you're going into it with friends. You're really keeping that single frame of mind, and yet you're expecting your finances are going to be able to accommodate two people doing this, two people sharing that, utilities. You've got a zillion little details that have to be shared. And that it could ruin a friendship. Just like going into business with somebody or loaning a friend money, that can ruin it. So I don't know. I think that renting and sharing that way is brilliant. And I see more and more people doing that. Older single people doing that.
All right. So now that we've built our foundation, we're saving our money, it is time to talk about what are some ideas for us to invest and then also to continue building our wealth and shepherding that wealth as single people. And one way, Pam, that you suggested might work when we were talking about this was one way many single women are getting ahead is through real estate investment and rental properties. And I think this is really great because we just found out that single women own more homes than single men. So the National Association of Realtors just put out this survey, this study, this information, and they were like, hey, right, married couples, committed couples are like the number one owners of home, but the number two owners of homes are single women, and they are ahead of single men. So Pam, let's talk about this. How do you get ahead?
Wait. Is that because they divorced their husband and took the home?
No. It's single women buying it. Erin, you're such
it's a good question. It's a valid question.
But it's a great question. It's valid. But no, actually,
if they're buying, awesome.
They're buying. Yes.
More power to them.
Yeah. It's actually home buyers. So yeah, it's really great.
That's a cool.
So anyway, so can you talk about that a little bit, Pam? Tell us a little bit about how do you get into this real estate? How do you do this rental property? And why is it something that single women excel at?
We are women. We love real estate. Let's talk about real estate investments. Not everybody builds up their entire net worth by only investing in the S&P 500. We all know that diversification when it comes to investments and building wealth wins all battles when it comes to being a successful investor, and real estate is a piece of that, and it's a super valuable asset. And historically, like you say, you might think of men as the big real estate investors, and something that women in particular have had to battle against to become homeowners is there is a bias. I'm not saying anybody's a victim. I am saying that the reality is there's a bias. There's been historically a bias when it comes to getting a mortgage. It wasn't that long ago that a bank would require your husband's signature on a loan.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having this conversation with Dave Rowan, who's one of the advisors in my network, one of the fee-only advisors. He happens to specialize in working with single people who want to buy real estate, specifically women. So I met one of his clients who lives in Arizona, and she also lives in Massachusetts. She has a home there and a home here. She's single. She's just over 60, and she was like a nurse her entire career, but she's been divorced a really long time, no children. So she's completely on her own, and she's completely in love with real estate. So she has, stocks, bonds. She's got her emergency savings and CDs and short-term bonds, but investing is where her heart is. So she bought 2 investment properties on her own, and she manages both of those. She manages and then rents them both out. Now, being a landlord and getting that kind of passive income by being a landlord isn't for everybody. I'm going to be honest, it wouldn't really be for me. But when it works, it becomes a whole new business that you own. And it turns out that, some women love to not only own, but they love to renovate and flip. So it's really appealing to single women. It really paints a picture of financial independence and stability, because if you do lose your job, and you don't have your 401k growing for you anymore, by contributions being made all the time out of your paycheck, and you interrupt that, real estate is a wealth building strategy, and it's a viable way to do that. So women are becoming more educated about investment strategies, different ways they can create this passive income through managing rental properties, and then the wealth generated, from this income. You got to picture, it might not happen overnight. Real estate never does unless you're really lucky and win the lotto. But once you've got your systems in place, and that's the key, then the passive income just grows steadily, exponentially over time. And then again, you've got to look at the pros and cons compared to couples who invest in real estate versus single people who invest in real estate. And I'm going to bring out one of the advantages of investing by yourself in real estate is ultimate flexibility. Part of the thing that can really kill a couple is having to make a zillion decisions together. What about this? What about the finish? What about that? It goes on and on and on. And you have to consider everything. In this case, when you're single, you kind of have the power to just go, you know what? I'm going to make some changes and adjustments, and I'll check in with an expert, but I don't need to consult anybody else. And that's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. And I think that's been one of the things that I have loved. And once again, I always have to say, I actually like my ex-husband. We're still friends. Whenever I'm in Philadelphia, we get lunch. So I actually really like my ex-husband. But after the divorce, the feeling of freedom, where I could be like, oh, I can make all of these investment decisions the way I want to make them. And like you said, that freedom, that flexibility. And it's not just real estate investing, right? If you start a business. So I, like you, buying a real estate and managing a portfolio of rental property is not my jam. I do have some REITs. If I want to add real estate, that's real estate investment trust. Yeah. If I want to add real estate diversity to my portfolio, which I do, I use REITs, and those are doing great. I'm actually getting some good dividends from some of my REITs, which has been nice. But having that flexibility and not having to consult with somebody all the time, not having that joint investment account, not having to be like, oh, this is how I want to run my business. Before the divorce, he was on the business with me, and I was fortunate in that when we did divorce, we just dissolved the business, dissolved the assets. It was fine. And then I just restarted a business myself, and it worked out very well. I have seen other women who don't have prenups or postnups have a business, and their ex is not as nice as mine, and they come after the business. So that's a whole other podcast episode. But I did find that the flexibility to rejigger my business and do it the way I want. And like you said, similar to rental properties, setting up systems and doing that, because if you are single and you are doing this on your own, before you hire help, before you have really that ability to hire help, having systems in place to have that business running smoothly and get that money coming in without you having to, need 50 hours in the day, is super helpful.
Do you guys think the home flipping shows and stuff like that kind of empowered everybody to think along those lines? I mean, or is it because, I can identify with women wanting to do real estate just because I feel like it's more tangible. It's something that's within your control. Like you can invest in stocks and stuff, which is time tested, but there's something about not being able to control that company's profits.
I don't think.
Whereas with your house, it's your property. You go, I could change the color of that thing.
Right.
I can do whatever I want.
Instead of, I think it's in addition to. You're building a portfolio that's diversified. So owning real estate, you own your own home, and then from there you decide you want to buy something else as a rental property, or you want to add an ADU to your property or whatever it is. Yeah, I think the flipping shows have definitely got people a lot, excited about the prospects of making money doing this. And I think that anyone who's single, who's thinking about going into that aspect of it, I would recommend to get together with others who have already done it, or an advisor like Dave, who can tell you, let me save you some time here and a lot of money. These are the guidelines. These are the systems that need to be put into place, that you need to work out, so that you have a really nice flow, a workflow of all the checklist things that you need to be able to do. And then remember, when you're watching the flipping shows, you're always seeing them go in and just the editing and everything is always like, okay, day 3, it looked like this. Day 6, it was done. That in real world, you either have to have the right crew and the right people or the right partner, or, you have to figure out how you're going to renovate and live there at the same time. So I think you have to take all those things with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and we do actually have a great podcast episode about house flipping and how to do it with Mendy Jensen from Bigger Pockets. So we're going to include that in the show notes so you can hop on in there and check that out and see how that works. And I think, what you talked about, different strategies for singles to invest. We're talking about real estate. We're talking about if you want to start a business, that's a great way to invest in yourself and in your future. I have my business. I use REITs instead of actually doing the tangible nitty gritty, because as we all know on this show, I am lazy. And I don't want to do that.
Nothing wrong with
but indexing is also fine. We talked about that a little bit. A little bit of indexing is good to build your retirement portfolio for the future. Make sure you're getting your matches when you have them. And and you can diversify with some individual stocks as well. We've got some great episodes from Stacy on how to find those individual stocks and do that. But once you're starting to build that wealth, part of your investing, part of your finances as a single person is estate planning. How do you leave your legacy? What are we doing there? So Pam, can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of estate planning and figuring out what you're going to do with these riches after you're gone? I'm planning to spend till I die. I'm that die with zero lady. But if you want to leave a wealth legacy,
and a lot of people are doing this retire while they're like the 401ks aren't set up this, but I know a lot of people are doing the retire throughout. Like they're spending their money.
Yeah.
Right through retirement. They're not waiting for retirement.
And that doesn't mean that you're not charitable. It means that I'm like that. I want to give my money away while I can enjoy it. Of course you want to do something in advance and have your beneficiaries thoughtfully, your heirs in case something happens to you. You can't predict the date you're going to disappear off the earth. So you've got to have like that idea of, if I die before I spent all my money, what am I going to do with it? But it's much more than that, you guys, because I've just been through this with two situations. And these are both situations where the people are younger. I have a really dear friend who's single, and she died of lung cancer in January. And so our other mutual friend, because she didn't have any other family, none, not even nieces and nephews. So as her best friends, she asked one of our best friends to be the executor because she lives here and she's closest to her. And that by seeing what Wendy is going through, by looking through our friend's estate, it taught us so much firsthand about, oh my gosh, don't wait. As a single person, things like this, think about this. It's not just leaving money behind or, who am I going to leave my necklace to? It's not that. What really matters is something like, what if I don't die, but I am all of a sudden, I'm medically unable to make decisions? That's part of estate planning. Figuring out who is going to be your appointed person designated to be your healthcare proxy in case you can't speak for yourself. That is so huge. If you think about that as a single person, you need that even more than someone who's married with kids. And then, you also think about the other aspects of this sounds really, really morbid, but think about this. Our dear friend, had the wherewithal to think beforehand of telling us how she wanted her ashes to be taken care of and what she expected as far as like a memorial, things like that. She left money so that we could throw a party for a bigger group of our friends to celebrate her life. So when you're thinking about yourself and you're single, remember, there might not be anybody else. Maybe you do have nieces and nephews, but unless you've really thought about it and taken the time to talk about it, it's not just about keeping your heirs updated, your beneficiaries, I should say, updated, and knowing what's going to happen to your stuff, your car, your house, your furniture. It's all about the things that they will get stuck doing because you didn't do it. So think of it as a gift to your friends to your loved ones and to your family. I'll tell you, the job of being an executor of somebody else's estate is a thankless job. Now, you do get compensated if there's money in the estate for that. But you, as the single solo person looking at your finances and planning ahead, you want to make sure that you do have money set aside so the people that you love can take care of themselves after you're gone.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And one of the things I have done personally to make things a little bit easier, because I don't have that real estate, I don't have the mortgages, I don't have like that stuff. All of my accounts have my son, and I, I am a single person, but I have a son, right? Like I had a son, I got divorced, I remain single, I like being single, and so I think one of the things that I've done to kind of make things easier on my son and other people in my life is I have him as my beneficiary on all of my accounts, right? He's my beneficiary for the life insurance. He's my beneficiary for the health savings account, for my bank account, for my investment accounts, for my retirement accounts. He is the beneficiary on everything. And so we don't have to worry about a long executor process. We don't have to worry about that stuff. And probably in the next couple of years, I'm probably going to set up, donor advised funds for some different charities that I am involved with. Like I give to charity regularly. I have that automatically set up. It just automatically goes to my charities of choice. But I think I'm going to set up a donor advised fund and get those things automatically in place so that, the charities I want to donate to are taken care of, and are appropriately, have all that set up appropriately as part of my estate planning so that the charities are taken care of. And so that, my son has those beneficiary rights so that it is not expensive and going through a lengthy process.
Yeah, when you have children, it's a different ball game with estate planning. Everything revolves around your son. Everything revolves around having a trust, making sure that everything is squared away. And now, I'm not going to compare a child to a pet, but I did have my pet, my baby girl, Chloe, who was on my show. She was on every episode of the show that I used to do. That matters because to me, it's like you think about all these things we just talked about with, having your stuff. And then you think about you leaving a pet behind. I mean, that's estate planning. It's thinking about who is the person I'm going to trust who's going to take care of my dog, my cat, my pet after I'm gone. I mean, it's a really important question. And that's why just having a simple will, and I'm sure, Miranda, you probably have a trust because you have a son. But just even having a simple will that speaks to your wishes and what you want to happen. Otherwise, if we keep putting it off and we keep thinking it's not something we need to do today, I'm telling you, something can happen in a heartbeat. And all of a sudden, all these questions are flying around in the air, leaving everyone in your life completely devastated.
Well, I also want to add to that what you guys are talking about with estate planning. So I'm reading here, like many single women without children are happy and single women with children are happier and healthy. To add to this, when you're without children, you may not have somebody to take care of you when you're older.
Yeah.
So, and not everybody, can build up amazing wealth,
right,
to hire, in-house nurses. So we have a couple that we know that are worried about this exact thing, and think outside the box. You may want to move to a different country where things are cheaper and the American dollar goes a lot farther. And you can maybe the healthcare is better in that country, or maybe you can get in-home healthcare for way cheaper. So those are layers that you can think about in your retirement as well.
Yeah.
Other than just, and women like to travel. Who doesn't like traveling? So go live somewhere else for a while.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. I mean, and like you said, not everybody, and I think one of the big things to plan too, especially if you have children, is like my parents have planned their retirement and their assets in such a way that they can actually, they'll be able to do assisted living, they'll be able to do memory care, they'll be able to do all that stuff. And so the burden doesn't come on us because, my grandparents, my dad's parents didn't necessarily make those plans. And so my parents and myself too, I took a turn. We remember caring for my grandma in her home and the stress it put on everybody. And so part of that too is thinking, if you're young enough and thinking, okay, how do I structure my assets? How do I build my wealth so that it doesn't place this on my children? I've talked to my son about my wishes. He's well aware of them. And I am, working on making sure that he doesn't have to be the one to do that so that when I do have my final days, we can spend them, having happy memories instead of him trying to figure out how to take care of me.
Do you have nieces and nephews too?
I do have nieces and nephews as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Reasonably close. Yeah. We do some things together. I thought about that too. One of my favorite things is there's a great, in Jane Austen, when they're talking about Emma and she's content with being single, she's talking about how, she would always have a niece with her if needed. And so I'm like, yes, the rich auntie. And so not everybody gets to be a rich auntie, and we understand that's true. But if you start planning when you're younger, and if you start, even if you want eventually to couple with somebody, if you want to get married, when you're younger as a single person, starting to build that foundation when you can, finding ways to save money as you can, even if it means living with your parents for a minute while you stack cash, or having roommates while you stack cash, starting that and building that foundation as a single person will make you that much stronger if you do couple with somebody later. But if it never happens, you've laid that foundation and you're set.
Exactly.
And so really thinking ahead that way, I think, is helpful as well.
And then by the time you're in your 50s, it comes and it goes. The time that goes by really, really quickly. There's a window of time to look at long-term care insurance. I am not a long-term care salesperson. I am a person that's looked at long-term care and looked at the pros and the cons. And I think that when you're single, I think you kind of need to really evaluate when you're in your 50s. That's the sweet spot to keep the premiums low. You need to have some disability insurance, which is highly underrated. And again, I'm not the person who loves insurance. These are insurances that I would want to make sure I understand really well in my fit by the time at any point, disability, no matter how old you are. But specifically, when you're getting to be in your 50s, that is a sweet spot. And I know for me, I need younger friends. I know that. I've got nieces and nephews, but I need younger friends. Make sure that they can help me, later on. And that they're incentivized to help me later on. And, the last thing I want to say about estate planning really quick is, why are we calling it estate planning? I'm racking my brain trying to come up with a better name, because estate planning sounds like, Thurston Howell III and his estate. It's all about who's going to bury your ashes or spread your ashes. That's estate planning. Who's going to take care of your pet?
Yes. I love that. I think that's great. We're going to workshop that, and we'll be back with a different podcast episode about the new term for stodule, the estate planning.
Looking for ideas. Yeah.
I am afraid we're out of time, but we are never out of topic. Dig deeper. You'll find links to lots more in our show notes. And remember, if your goal is to make more, spend less, and retire rich, your online home is moneytalksnews.com. And don't forget to check out my own online home as well. That's mirandamarquit.com. And visit Pam at her website. That's wealthramp.com. And one last thing. Remember, this is not financial advice. Make sure you do your own research and consult your own experts before acting on anything you learned here. And if you have a topic you want us to talk about, hello@moneytalksnews.com. Email us at hello@moneytalksnews.com. I'm Miranda Marquit.
I'm Aaron Freeman. Sorry about that.
I'm Pam Kruger from Wealth Ramp.
And thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time.